Hey guys, it's Dr. Tracy here, and this week in CISPROG 5, our scheduled topic is text files. And so this is a continuation of the chapter that we started to cover last week, and I'm going to go over text files and how we use them within Python. Okay, so let's talk about strings, or text files, one of the things. So in text files, if you're going to store information in a different location than in the program you're writing, you might store it in a text file because that'll create a software object that you can take keyboard input and store it to or read it from. So their formats are just basic formats using binary characters and are edited with programs such as Notepad or TextEdit to create and view and save numbers. Now, to be able to save to a file that will be external from the program, you have to first open the connection to the object. So in this case, you can see to open a file, F is equal to open myfile.txt W. So the file does not exist, it's created. And if it already exists, it's open so that you can write to it and the file is closed and any previous data is erased. So there's an f.write and f.close function, which will allow you to create the file and write to the file. So the file method write expects a string as an argument. You can see that other types of data must first be converted to strings because we're using straight characters. Characters are binary. Characters, there's 256 of them, and that means capital letters, lowercase letters, numbers, and some limited punctuation. So if in this case where the random integers between 1 and 500, use the str function to change something to a string before you write it so that it will save as a character in a text file, because the text file is exactly that, text. It doesn't have any value. And if you need to use those numbers later, you would just convert them back to integers. Okay, so W is to write, but R is to read. So when you open a file for input, because you want to get something from it, then you use the same command except for you use "R." And so if the path name is not accessible, it will give you an error. So this time it has to exist. So we could say the text is equal to f.read, and then that'll show whatever is in there. So in this case, the read method is going to pull out exactly what is in there as a string literal. And then when you use the print function, it will actually use the escape characters like /n to go down to the next line. After input is finished, read returns an empty string. So there's always going to be an empty string at the end. That's just because what it does, because it's a character that says it's over, and over will read as an empty string. So these are examples of reading numbers from a file. Again, you can see we changed it into a string to save it there. You change it into an integer to bring it back, and use the strip function in order to pull numbers apart so that you can look at each different number. So we have the open with the path name and the mode, read write or read write, and append, which means add to the end. Close. Whenever you open a file, you need to make sure that you close it. You can write or read to it, and you can read a whole line from it. When designing Python programs that interact with files, it is a good idea to make sure that you have some sort of error test to make sure that the file is there. So we can say path exists, and before attempting to open a file, you check to see if it exists by looking at the current path directory. So the module function out of OS, there's a few other things like change the directory, or get the current working directory, or list the names in the directory, make directory, remove a path, rename an old file or directory, and remove a directory. Okay, so if you create a text file and a Python file and they're in the same folder, none of this matters. But if you are pulling from something else, another folder or another place on your computer or another part, that's when you start to worry about directories on the disk and how to change them or modify them so that you can find the file that you're looking for. The exists path returns true if the path exists and false if otherwise. So that's just saying exists. If we put in where we think this file is, at least it'll test to make sure the file was there so we don't get an error. You could come back to say, if exists is true, then do all these other things. Otherwise, say file does not exist. So there is a case study about a text analysis. It starts in the chapter, and I'm going to go over that possibility on Thursday. And so if you want to meet on Thursday with the class, we'll talk about the case study. But that is the information about text input and output, and most of the code is there, and the assignments are there that relate to what we're going to use, and all of them use these functions right here. Hope that helps. I'll talk to you soon.